Hey there everybody. Today we're going to be building a reimport editor tool. This type of tool is useful if you are building something that is modifying scripts and you want the editor to persist while it reimports. If you're familiar with editor scripting, then you know anytime a recompile occurs, you put your editor tool at risk, or your editor window at risk of essentially breaking, and you have to reopen it. So I'll try to cover some of those topics in this video. So our goal here is, as you can see, we have some dummy scripts, and our goal is to just reimport those using a simple button with an editor tool. So I'll open up my editor, my editor script. It's called reimport and load, and we'll go ahead and start modifying that. Okay, so here we are in an empty script. Notice that I have included the using Unity editor, and I am deriving my class from editor window. So the first thing we want to do is just make sure we can get a window to show up for us. So let's go ahead and add the code for that. And a lot of the stuff that I'm doing here is pretty basic. We do have a beginner editor scripting series. You can look at that if any of this is foreign to you. And then we just call window.show. Now I also want to go ahead and include the onGUI method. And I want to go ahead and draw our button so we can make sure we're getting our basic functionality. We can see all this tool is going to have is a button called reimport. So GUI layout dot button reimport. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to Unity and see if we're getting our window to show up and we have a reimport button. Okay, so back at our editor, we have the editor tools option showing up, and then we have reimport, and now we have our reimport button. We can click that. So everything is working now. The only other thing we need to do is add the logic so that when we click reimport, it's going to import all of these dummy scripts. Okay, so back at our class here, we want to define what those script names are. We're going to be using an AssetDatabase.importAsset function call, and we need the paths to each of those dummy scripts. So what we want to do is say create a string array called scripts, set that equal to a new string array. There'll be 10 elements in it, so we have 10 scripts that we're going to be reimporting. Okay, and the path to my scripts, as you can see over here on the left, will be assets, and actually not in the editor, but our first script is dummyscript1.cs. Okay, and then we'll just copy and paste this for all of our other dummy scripts. So these are all of these scripts that we're going to be reimporting. And again, this type of tool would be useful if you were creating something that modified scripts through your tool. So if you're adding functionality, sort of abstracting some of the complexities from the user. For instance, if they were to complete some sort of action and you were to write code for them, then you would want to reimport those scripts. So that's sort of what we're trying to do here. Okay, so we have our array of scripts that we're going to be reimporting, and then we need some member variables that are going to control the reimport process. So we'll have a Boolean that determines whether or not we are reimporting. Okay, so this is going to determine whether or not a reimport process has begun. Okay, then we need a bool for working. And this is going to determine if a script is being worked on. So script being worked on. So are we currently working on importing a script? And then we'll have a progress integer and initialize that to -1. Okay, so this will determine how many scripts we have reimported. Okay, so we'll talk more about these variables as we get into the logic. Now, the next thing is we're going to be needing to update this, and onGUI doesn't update unless we're interacting with the editor window. So we need something that updates similar to how update would work in the or during the play session of a game. So we need some sort of continuous update, and the way we do that is we want to subscribe to the, so we'll say on enable. We want to subscribe to the editor application event. So that's editor application.update, and we'll create our own update method. And of course, anytime we subscribe to an event, we want to unsubscribe on disable. Okay, so I'm subscribing to that event with something called update, so I need to create that method, void update. So if I were to say debug.log here, then we would be able to go back to the editor and see that this is being called continuously. So let's go ahead and test that out. Okay, so back at Unity, let's go ahead and go to Editor Tools and then the Reimport tool. And if we look down in our console, we can see that that's continuously updating. So that's doing exactly what we want it to do. So let's go back to our script and add the reimport functionality. So what we want to do is when we press this reimport button, we say that reimporting is equal to true. And we also want to say, hey, if we're reimporting, we don't want them to be able to press that button anymore. So we don't want to display anything on the onGUI call. So we'll say we're only going to draw this button if we are not reimporting. So we'll say if reimporting, then we just return. So if we're reimporting, none of this is going to get called. Similarly, and conversely, we want to say in our update call, only update if we are, only update if we are reimporting. So if not reimporting, then we return. So if we're not reimporting, then none of this is going to get called. Okay, so now what we want to do is determine the logic required to step through each one of these scripts and import it. So let's talk about just importing one of these scripts. Let's see what that might look like. What we would want to say is if progress is equal to -1. So we're just trying to determine if we have if we've progressed to this script. So we'll say if progress is equal to -1 and we're not working. Okay, if progress is equal to -1 and we're not working, then we want to say progress is equal to 0 and working is equal to true. And then we want to say something like AssetDatabase.import asset. So this is actually going to import the asset for us. And then we want to say scripts, so that scripts array at progress, which would be the first element at this point because we've set progress equal to 0. Okay, and then also what we want to do is say editor application is equal, or I'm sorry, editor application, I'm getting mixed up with my editor classes, EditorUtility dot display progress bar. This is going to bring up a progress bar for us, and what that takes is 3 parameters. The first one is the title of the progress bar, so we'll say reimporting, and the second parameter is the info of the progress bar. So we could use this string for what we're currently reimporting, so that could just be the scripts at progress. It'll basically just show this path name, indicating that we are currently reimporting that script. And then we have a progress. So how far along is that progress bar? So we'll say cast this float, or cast this int into a float, and divide that by the script's length, -1. Okay, and that'll indicate how much progress we have. And then finally, what we want to do is determine whether or not we finished reimporting. So whenever we call AssetDatabase.import asset, that's going to cause the application to start compiling. So what we can do is say if we're not compiling anymore, editor application.isCompiling. So If not, editor application.isCompiling. If we're not compiling, in other words, that we know that we finished, we can say working is equal to false, and we can say reimporting is equal to false, and then we can also drop the progress bar. So we can say EditorUtility.clear progress bar. If we've done everything right, we should be able to press that reimport button, and it should reimport the first script for us. So let's go ahead and go back to Unity and see if this works. Okay, so we're back at Unity. We can click on Editor Tools, go to Reimport. If we click Reimport, this should do what we described earlier. Okay, so the display, the progress bar shows up. It didn't actually go through any progress on the progress bar because there's only one script. Now we want to find out how we can step through each one of these scripts. Okay, so the reason I laid it out like this is so that we can understand the logic that's required at each step in the import process. But we want to, we have 10 scripts here, and in a realistic progress, we could have much more. So we don't want to actually copy and paste this whole thing for every one of those scripts, right? So what we want to do is sort of define this logic within a loop. And again, the reason I laid it out in this fashion was so that it was easier to understand each step in the process. Whenever we do things like this in a loop, it can be difficult to understand exactly what's going on. So we'll convert this logic into a loop. We'll say int I is equal to 0 while I is less than scripts.length, and we increment I. And then we say if progress is equal to I minus 1. So if you think about this, if we think about this, the progress in this case is equal to 0 minus 1. So we can say if progress is equal to I minus 1, and we need 2 equal signs here for the equality operator. And we'll say and not working. So same thing that we're doing above. So we only want to increase progress if we're not currently working. Then we can say that progress is equal to I. And then we say working equals true. And then we're going to just copy and paste these two lines right here. All right, and that's it. Now we need to make some adjustments here, because if this stops compiling, then we want to check to see if we've actually reached the last script in our reimport array. So before we say reimporting is equal to false, we want to make sure that we've finished reimporting all of our scripts. So we can say if progress is equal to scripts.length minus 1, that would indicate that we've finished compiling our last script, and then we can stop reimporting, and then we can get rid of the progress bar. Okay, so I think we've done everything correctly. We can go back to Unity and see how this works. Okay, so back at Unity, now we want to press reimport. And you can see it stepping through each one of these scripts now. And you can see that it's incrementing, or it's changing the path value as we progress through the compiling process. Okay, well, that was pretty much it, guys. I hope you learned something new. The topics that we're going to be covering in the rest of the series are going to be similar to this. Not stuff that you see every day, but stuff that's sometimes just good to know. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.